In this video, I'm going to show you how to install guttering. And if you're new to this channel, my name's Josh. This channel is all about DIY to save a ton of money. So be sure to subscribe, ring that bell so you get notification every time I release a new video, and hammer that like button for me. That's all I ask in return for making this video. So we got a lot to go over today, so let's get started. This video is going to be aimed more towards the person that wants to go to a Lowe's or Home Depot and actually pick up the guttering in sections and piece together. Now there's other options out there. You can usually hire a company that'll come out and make a seamless gutter that does not have any joints, and that's going to cost you roughly 3 times as much as what's going to cost to buy the pieces and do yourself. The guttering that I'll be installing is 6-inch. Now there's another common size that would be the 5-inch. We like to use 6-inch whenever possible. There's a few benefits to the 6-inch guttering. One, it can simply handle more volume of water compared to the 5-inch. 2, it looks a little better because it's a little bulkier. And 3, because it's a little bigger, it offers a little bit of a shield effect to the rain coming off of a metal roof that's coming down fast. And that's going to be a big benefit to installing this on a metal roof. And if you have a shingled roof, yes, it doesn't come down near as fast, but during a hard rain, it can still overshoot the gutter if you're not careful. So you want to go with the 6-inch whenever possible, in my opinion. This is the roof I will be installing the guttering on. This is a metal roof that I installed in my previous video, and if you want to check that video out, I'll put a link in the description below, but you want to watch this video first so you get your details on the guttering. I'm going to mark the exact center here, so that way we have a starting point so we know where to key our slope from. An easy way to get the center is we're just going to measure roughly half coming this way, then half this way, then get between those marks to find the center without measuring across the whole length. From the right side of the roof, 31-foot hit here. Then from the left side of the roof, 31-foot hit here. So the exact center would be right here. Now that we got our total length, which is 62-foot 1.5 inch, we know exactly how much slope we'll need. Because we measured 31 foot to here, then 31 foot to here, we know exact center. So whenever we make our slope from one side of the roof to the other, our chalk line will sag too much with that much length. So we're going to hold here in the center so that we have a total slope of 1/4 inch per 10 foot. So it's just a little over 1.5 inches from one side of the roof to the other. And we're going to use the center here to key off of so our string line isn't sagging. The guttering will begin on this side of the roof and slope towards the other side. So this will be the highest point of our guttering. And you could also start in the middle of the roof and slope towards each direction. But with this run and using the 6-inch and the size of this roof, it's totally fine to start from one end and slope clear to the other. So I want my chalk line below the guttering so we can eyeball it easier. I'm just going to measure up 1.5 inches and make a mark to begin our slope. And it can be a little heavy here just because we are technically a little over 60 feet and we want about 1/4 inch per 10 foot of slope. And because this is such a long run, we're actually going to chalk the line from end to center, then from center to end, so that way we don't have a big sag in our chalk line. I'm here at the exact center to where our guttering will be. I'm going to come up 3/4 inch, make a mark for our chalk line because that will be the halfway point of the run of guttering. We're now going to chalk the line from point to point. We're now going to chalk the line from the center mark to the very end. The very end is at the very bottom of the fascia board. Our chalk line is going from 1.5 inches up on that side through the center, that's a 3/4 inch high here, down to the very end of the fascia board at the bottom. We're going to begin here on this side of the roof, and we need to mark exactly where we need to cut our hole out for our guttering. And how we're going to do this guttering is we have this piece that's going to get glued into the hole, and then our guttering will snap onto that. And this guttering that we're using, we can flex it so it can go this way or it could go that way. So either one will work. We're going to hold this up onto the side of the house where we want it installed to get the exact placement of our hole. Depending on how you want your guttering installed, this is designed to go off the side of the house like so. But you could also get elbows and have it coming down the face. So either way, it's totally fine, whatever you want. And I'm going to hold this up roughly where I want it installed. I'm going to mark here on each side of it. And we know right here will be the center of our guttering hole. And I like to extend the guttering 2 inches past the end of the roof. So we're actually going to add 2 inches here for the beginning of our guttering. I'm going to burn 2 inches off the edge. To the first mark, we got 9 inches. To the second mark, we got 13 3/4. Here is the end, and I have the guttering flipped over. I'm going to come over 9 inches, make my first mark, and then 13 3/4. So we know it's right between here. And essentially, it needs to be cut out at the exact size of the top of this beveled hole. So it turns out to be 2.5 inches by 4 inches. So we're going to mark that here onto this metal. So right here is the center. So right here be the very end. Right here's the center. Now we need to come 2.5 inches here. I got a drill with a 1/2 inch drill bit that will go through metal. And because, as you can see, it's rounded over, we want to round over the cutout as well. So we're going to drill that out in the corners. And you want to make sure you wear eye protection here as well. I'm going to use straight aviation snips to cut from point to point, staying on that line. We now got the hole cut out, and there's actual tools meant to cut this out, but as a DIY option, this works pretty good. This is the sealant I will be using for this installation. You want to make sure it's a really high quality sealant, because that's essentially what keeps your guttering watertight. We're going to place a liberal bead of sealant right around the edge where we got to install that part. I'm now going to place the guttering adapter right through the guttering and make sure we press it in really tight here. Using an 1/8 inch drill bit, I'm going to drill the holes out for our pop rivets. We're now going to flip the guttering over. The pop rivets I will be using here are 1/4 inch long, and they are 1/8 inch in diameter, and I'll put a link to these in the description below, along with a lot of the other parts used for this installation. I'm now going to install a pop rivet through each one of the holes that we drilled, and that's going to secure this to the guttering. We're also going to seal the inside of that as well. I'm now going to install the end cap, and they make a left and a right. If you're looking at the house, the left would be your left and your right would be your right when it comes to the cap. So the left side would go onto here, and then the right would be down on the other side of the house. Ultimately, I'm going to place sealant on this before installing it, but I'm going to pre-drill the pop rivet holes just because this has a tendency to want to push out, so I want my pop rivet holes ready to go. So we're just going to do 2 on the back and then 2 on the front. I don't want any below because we want to avoid any kind of hole here towards the bottom. I'm going to place a liberal bead right into the groove of the cap. We're going to place that right into the edge. And now install our pop rivets. Now I'm just going to clean up this sealant that squeezed out around the side here. Now seal the inside. And that's all there is to installing the end cap. I have 2 pieces of 16-foot guttering. I got the 16-foot piece that we just installed, the downspout adapter and the end cap. And over here is another 16-foot piece. And the water is going to be coming this way. So we want to make sure that your overlap is correct. That's the most critical part whenever you're making one of these joints, is that we overlap in the way to the water falls into the direction it keeps going. You don't want to overlap the other way because you're almost guaranteed to have a leak that way. So we're going to make our joint right here with a 6-inch overlap. In order to make this overlap, the water is going to be coming down from this direction. So you want it to waterfall down into this section of guttering. In order to do that, I'm going to take 6 inches off this section of the gutter so it slides into this section of guttering. I'm just going to come down on the face of about 1/8 inch. And this is going to slide right into this section. And it gives you a nice seam here. And we're going to install sealant before we make this official. Because we have 6 inches of area here, we have plenty of room to put sealant, which that's the biggest benefit of having this much overlap. So we're going to run a couple liberal beads here to give us a couple barriers the water would have to get through to escape. So we don't push all the sealant out. We're going to lace this overlap in because that's going to be the best way to keep most of the sealant in place. So we're just going to lace it right in. I'm now going to take a clamp and clamp that together so it pushes it all the way down. I'm now going to install 6 pop rivets in the back and in the front. And just like the end cap, we want to keep our pop rivets up out of the bottom. You don't want to put any down here if you can avoid it. We now have 6 in through the back. Now we're going to place them into the front. We now apply sealant to this crease. That is the first seam of the run. It's now time to install the gutter hangers, and these install really easy. These hangers are to be installed at least every 2 foot. You can put them closer if you want, but that's overkill. If you look at these little divots, they actually line up 2 foot on center, so we can just mark those so we got our 2 foot layout real easy. In order to install these, they just lace up under this lip, then they just clip onto the other side, so they're ready to go once we lift the guttering up into place. Once this is lifted up into place, we're simply going to drive this screw with the scent adapter that came with the hangers, and that's how it's going to be secured to the fascia. I have a step ladder set up on this end, and I have a step ladder down here for him, and we're just going to lift this up into place and place a couple of these screws in to hold the guttering before we continue the run. I'm going to line this part up to where we measured earlier so that it is in line with the side of the house. All right, we have this lined up on our chalk line. Now I got to drive the hanger screw into the fascia to hold it. I'm now going to line it up on the chalk line about halfway and down towards the end to have it held temporarily. This is the next one to be installed, and I'm just going to measure back the same as we did before and then cut that section out to install it. And I'm going to place the sealant into the overlap just like we did when we were on the ground. All right, to make that joint, I did pop this off so we could overlap it easy. And we're going to tack this back on. He's going to place a screw in one of his hangers so we can finish making this joint. I'm now just going to finish the joint just like we did on the ground, except for one simple nuance here on the back. I'm now going to use 2 sheet metal screws to place in the back since we can't get our pop rivet gun into the back to hold the back together. And just like the pop rivets, I kept these up out of the bottom of the guttering. Then place sealant on that crease just like we did when this was on the ground. I'm now going to get my measurement from the end of the roof to the gutter. So we're going to add 2 inches for the overhang off the end of the roof. Then we're going to add 6 inches to that, and that's going to be our length we need to cut. The easiest and best way to cut the guttering is to have a miter saw. Now with a miter saw, you want to make sure that you get more of a fine-tooth blade and one turned around backwards, so when we're cutting, where the teeth ain't grabbing the metal, it's actually kind of burning through the metal. So that's something really important to note. And also, above anything else is safety. You definitely want to wear eye protection and ear protection and gloves because this is really loud when you're cutting this with a miter saw. So I'm going to demonstrate on how to cut this. And also, this is a 12-inch miter saw. I have the piece of guttering to where it's square up against the fence, and we're going to hold it really tight and then cut real slow through the metal. As you just seen, that makes a really clean cut, very easy, nice and square. So this is definitely ideal for cutting the guttering. I'm now going to install the right-sided end cap, and I could have did this on the ground. Same exact steps. We're going to apply sealant, then just place pop rivets on each side to hold it into place. And like always, place sealant on the inside of the joint. To finish anchoring the rest of the gutter, I simply have to go through and tighten up all of the screws that are in the gutter hangers to the fascia board. When it comes to downspouts, there's a couple things that you need to know when it comes to ordering what you need. And I'll also put a link in the description below to all the parts I'll be using that you've seen me install in this video. First thing I'd like to go over is the size of the downspout. There are two common sizes. We got 2 by 3 inch, and that's going to be for your smaller roofs and your smaller downspouts, and that typically goes with the 5-inch guttering. Then you got the 3 by 4 inch, which usually goes with the 6-inch guttering, which we installed here. So we'll be installing 3 by 4 inch downspouts coming out of the gutter down the side of the wall and then out to the ground. And there are two different types of elbows. You got A elbows and you got B elbows. A elbows, as you can see, are wide. B elbows, as you can see, are not wide, they are thin. And these are meant for going along the side of the wall, like I explained earlier, like so. And these are meant for going in front of the wall like this, so going right down. And for our installation, we're going to be coming out of the guttering using the B elbows. I'm going to install this B elbow over to this wall. If you look at the end, it's shaped just like this adapter. So it can be installed like this if you're headed that direction. Or if you had the A elbow, you would install it just like so and it angled towards the house for the front. But as I already mentioned, that's going to be on the side of the house. So we actually got to turn this sideways like so and flex it over that adapter. And make sure we're pointing exactly where we want to go to the house. We're now going to install pop rivets on each end of here to hold, one on each side. The rest of this I'm going to build on the ground. I'm going to eyeball roughly where we are going to hit and then get our measurement for this piece. If we take a measurement, we got 9 inches, and this doesn't have to be perfect, just as long as we're right here along the side of the house. So if we take the 9 inches, I'm going to add about 2 inches, enough for each one to slide into each other. So the 9 would turn into add 4. So we got a 13-inch piece we got to cut to make this extension. And I'm also going to mark the bottom of this, so that way I know how long of a piece I need to get from here to go down the ground. I'm going to lay my A elbow down here roughly where it's going to come out onto the ground. And I'm going to measure down to that and then add 4 inches. 86 inches will be my total length of the downspout. I'm also going to use the miter saw with the blade turned around backwards to cut the downspout. This is the factory end that came with the crimped corner, so that's going to slide into an elbow. This side's going to slide over. And if you need to make a crimped corner, they make a tool for that, but since I'm doing this as a DIY thing, I'm just going to use a pair of needle nose, grab it, and then just bend it in. That's just going to give us a nice, slightly bent in corner so we can slide it into the next piece easily. This is the next B elbow that needs installed to connect these two together. We know we need this side of the downspout to hook the B elbow to. And also there is a side here that does not have a seam like over here, so we obviously want this sticking out. And the same with the elbow. So with that being said, we want to make sure that this goes down into here to continue the water. So you always want to make sure, just like the guttering, the water is always water falling down in the direction it's going. We don't want the joint like this if the water is going down, because it's going to come out here. We want this to go inside of the downspout. So I'm going to add a little crimp here. Now I'm going to pop rivet that together. And now this one will go into here. And this side will get the A elbow going out from the house. We can now go install this up into the guttering. All right, we're going to place this roughly where it goes. All right, I now need a mark for the brackets for the wall so we can place them before installing the guttering to the elbow. To install the hidden downspout bracket, I'm going to hold it right up to the edge here where the guttering is going to be installed. And I'm going to mark the outside holes here. I don't think it's necessary to put 3 screws here. I'm then going to pre-drill the siding with a 7/32 drill bit, just to allow for expansion and contraction. I'm now going to use a construction screw on each side of the bracket to secure it to the side of the house. I am using a 3-inch screw here because this is a new construction house. I knew there was no wire behind this area. Now I would recommend using a screw no longer than 1 3/4 on a pre-existing home, because you could hit a wire with any longer screw than that. And there's all kinds of ways to install these, but this tends to be strong. I'm now going to install one up above as well. I'm now going to slide the elbow into the downspout I just built. We're going to hold it tight, and then we're going to place a screw. These are stainless steel screws into the downspout through this flange. Then we just do that on each side. Once the guttering collects the water and it comes down this downspout, it's not great to keep this running onto the ground every time. Even with those little blocks, it'll just erode the ground. The best thing to do is install drain pipes here for the downspouts. If you want to see how to install those, check out this video. It'll help you out.